This is great fun. I love the fact that you and I see the world largely through the same kinds of engagement lenses.
Same here.
But let's
Except
look
that your white hair is atop your head and mine is beneath.
right for the moment, but it's going fast. I'm here with Ian Baer, who's I'm going to read this out of your bio here because it's just
Oh
too good.
man.
No, you got to allow me to do this.
All right. Thank
Ian
you.
Baer is an ad agency executive with over 35 years experience, leading some of the largest ad agencies in the world, including, I'm listing them off, Publicis and TVWA. In addition to being president of Rap Collins Omnicom, chief strategy officer at Roxa, president of social agency Big Fuel, and EVP for Deutsch, and a founder of Soothe Home, has some incredible insights to bring to the table. And I'm really glad we're finally connecting. Ian, thanks for doing this.
Me too, Mike. It's we got off to a great start in the conversation before you hit record, so I can't even imagine where we're going now.
Yeah, right. Well, and you know what? I was going to say we have to keep it PG, but we don't. We don't. We have editing.
Oh, thank you. Sometimes I do get that warning at the beginning, and I have to be careful not to let my Brooklyn roots show.
Right. We can be potty mouthed here. It's okay.
All right.
We're all sort of grown-ups.
Well, I'll try to keep it a little bit clean, or my wife will yell at me.
Right. Well, let's go back 5 minutes into the conversation, and Ian and I were talking about some of our shared history of not only the fact that, when you've been in marketing this long, in and out of various circles, you bump into the same people, or you bump into lots of people who know the same people. And it turns out it actually is a fairly small industry once you've been in it this long. But
and a game of Survivor.
Right. We're still here.
So it's like that circle gets smaller the longer you stay in the game.
Right. And you don't, I guess, basically kind of self-kick themselves off the island in this case.
Yeah. That's right.
But Ian was just making a really interesting point that I completely agree with, that when he and I both got into this business, there was some sort of indescribable magic and fire to it that I think still exists in some corners, but you can look around the agency world right now and you just don't get a sense of that. You just really don't. I mean, there's a lot of, look, the work has been commoditized because it kind of needed to be on some level. But the idea that creativity could reign supreme, could really change perceptions, could change brands, you just don't find it anymore. I don't think. And I look for it and I appreciate it. I'm inspired by it. But I don't know. What do you think?
Well, what I think is it's tricky as heck. I'll run some parallels, because as passionate as I am about marketing, I might be even more passionate about baseball. I am one of the nerdiest baseball fans on the planet. I have been since I was a kid. Probably one of the reasons I'm so driven by the quantified side of marketing, statistical analysis, and being able to use that in really interesting ways, which frankly, that's what Soup is all about. It all comes out of my obsession with statistics as a baseball fan. Well, let's look at what's happened to baseball over the last few decades. Analytics really took over. People became so obsessed with performance as measured statistically that I think a lot of baseball fans feel some of the beauty of the game, some of the nuance of the game, some of the more strategic sides of baseball have been lost in the process. Things like the stolen base was largely analyzed out of baseball for many years. One of the most exciting plays in the game, right? Okay, let's talk about advertising. I started in an industry. My first agency was a direct marketing agency, and really one of the best, most pioneering direct marketing agencies. Shop that was called Cobbs and Brady eventually became Draft, and then faded into the world of what is now FCB. But I took a lot of pride, statistical nerd that I was, that we could actually measure the performance of everything we did. And I thought that was amazing.
Which back in the day was also really unique. Not everybody could do that.
That's right. And advertising had such a reputation for being pomp and circumstance and dog and pony and but I don't really know what you sold at the end of the day. And then here I was working with people and working under mentors who showed me, no, actually, we can prove out the business benefit of what we do. And I thought that was amazing when married to creativity. And the same way people fell in love with statistics in baseball and probably overanalyzed the game, and now we're seeing it start to roll back a little bit. People really became obsessed with measurable performance and accountability. So it's not a great mystery when we look at how we got here to understand that by and large, people were saying, well, if I'm going to choose between the thing that makes me feel good about my brand and the spreadsheet I can show my boss that might lead to my promotion or bonus or job retention, it's understandable why they chose the spreadsheet. Enter the era of procurement, and now you have these analytics crossed with a bunch of people whose job it is to deliver cost savings to large, often publicly traded entities that demand the same. So more and more, you have brand marketing organizations demanding higher performance, more results, and willing to pay less for it every year. And the unfortunate reality of where way too much of the business has ended up is in this morass that I refer to as advertising by the pound, where it's more how many ad units am I going to get, how many TV spots, how many bodies for the dollar, with an expectation of relatively low commoditized performance, whether the work is brilliant or not. And as a result, the industry's lost passion, the industry's lost artistry, it's also lost a lot of talent. You have a
Don't you
lot of
think?
people saying, you know what, there's other stuff I can do that might feed my soul more. I
Right.
do think, to your point, the fires still burn at a number of shops, especially a number of independent shops.
Yeah.
But it's certainly not the kind of star system it was when I entered the business, where it was like, gosh, maybe one day I'll work for Lee Clow, or maybe
Right.
someday I'll get to work with Richard Kirschenbaum. Or now in the business, people don't really have that same understanding. It's just a different time.
But don't you think that that the pendulum, having swung this far into commoditization, kind of creates an opportunity on the other side of that big circle for real creativity, for people to start thinking out of the box? Because at this point, it's almost a necessity. Because if you said, you're looking at diminishing returns and results, you're looking at a commoditized process, and it just seems to me that if you really look hard, you could find people who are still trying to think of solutions that don't look like everybody else's.
For sure. I do think the pendulum's going to swing back. And I think a couple of things will drive that. One, ironically, is artificial intelligence. Because as much as people are in a panic, seemingly, over creative jobs going away as a result of AI taking over a bunch of copywriting responsibilities, or versioning out the same banner ad for 300 different websites, and yes, it will take that mechanical side, but it's actually going to take a lot of the process management, a lot of what has fallen, functions like traffic that are sort of becoming a thing of the past already, thanks to software. And the less clients are paying for that, the more there's going to be an opportunity for differentiated talent to step up and say, no, actually, we're not going to get paid to do the same thing a machine can do, or for an hour of somebody's talent to do the same thing 1,000 other similarly qualified individuals could do, but we're actually going to be able to receive value for a differentiated offering, for a higher level of creativity. I think the people who will survive this wave of technology upheaval will be the most talented people with the most to say. And what that converges with is a change in consumerism because, when I was growing up, advertising was a necessary evil of life. I want to watch this TV show, I'm going to watch the commercials. I want to, read this magazine, I'm going to see a bunch of ads. That's not the world we live in anymore. People get to be very selective. People get to pay extra to not see advertising at all. So for advertising to be relevant, it has to break through and it has to act in ways that advertising hasn't always acted. It actually has to help people, or it has to entertain them, or it has to touch them on some emotional level, or it's the tree that fell in the forest with nobody to hear.
Picture your organization as a solitary island amidst a vast, churning sea of opportunities. On the horizon lie other islands, relationships waiting to be built, partnerships waiting to be formed. But between your island and those distant shores stretches a turbulent expanse filled with uncertainty and risk. You're going to need a bridge, or bridges, plural, to span this divide, connecting you to new horizons. Those bridges are strategic partnerships. Yet, building bridges and partnerships is no simple task. They both require careful planning, precise engineering, and a deep understanding of the terrain. Missteps can lead to collapse, leaving your business stranded on its island. Tectonic builds strategic partnerships, helping organizations navigate the treacherous waters, ensuring that those bridges are strong and resilient and scalable. There's a reason why some of the largest, most progressive companies in the world are retooling their revenue models and investing in partnerships. Find out more at tectonic.co. That's TECTONIQ.co. You're talking about AI and everybody's dread, especially in the creative community. I actually don't see any reason for dread if you're approaching your task in a genuinely creative way. I mean, for me personally, I love that I now have the ability to churn through 35 bad ideas quickly to get to the one decent one. And that was an excruciating process of hours and days and sometimes weeks to get to that. And right now I can be in a flow. I can churn through the junk, which everybody has to churn through. You just have to. That's just part of the process. But AI has been incredible for me just to start burning through the junk, getting to the good stuff, synthesizing the good together, and coming up with a decent solution. So I'm a huge fan.
In a lot of ways, that's exactly the role it plays in our business, because after years and years and years of seeing time and money spent on testing and learning and refining, or doing 2 years worth of market research and dropping hundreds of thousands of dollars, or even worse, having all that research redlined at the start of the project because no one wanted to pay to understand what people would need. We'll just try a bunch of stuff and see what works. Now all of that gets crunched up by AI, and when I can go to a client in a few weeks with the insights that it used to take me years of research and testing and learning to be able to prescribe what their customers want from them, AI is the hero in that story.
Yeah, it's
And
good to be
then what
alive.
I'm allowed to do with it is focus on actually solving people's problems.
Right, right. Instead of selling the idea that you could get to a solution.
Yes.
We
I've never forgotten, early in my career, I had a meeting with a client and I was so excited. We had done, as typical, again, I started in direct marketing, so we're very big on test matrices, right? And I'm the earnest account guy who comes in and good news, here's the latest results of our test. And I show him, look at how well the winning cell out of this 5-cell test performed. And he laughed and he said, that's interesting. You see one success, I see 4 failures. I have to explain to my boss why we spent money on these 4 things that bombed. So good for you that you can say you found me a new performing, control, but I have to explain why I let these 4 things into the market. And I have never forgotten that conversation. And I really made it my mission, often my problem, to keep those failures out of the marketplace. So now having the ability to do that, thanks to technology, just makes me feel like a much better partner.
Yeah, it's a much more efficient way to go in with a solution.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
completely
it's
agree.
kinder. It's kinder to the consumers too, because as who likes having a bad experience with a brand?
True. Which
Or
brings,
feeling like a brand doesn't understand you or is just trying to sell you something you don't need. That
well,
that just makes people recoil, and they have a lot more options than they used to, and they can get to those options much faster.
how many
So, you don't have the time you used to have as a brand to make up for a bad experience. The clock's already run out.
and how many conversations have you had on the client side recently or whenever over you pick the time frame where the client says, yes, we need to improve our personalization efforts. And in the next breath, they're talking about essentially what we were saying, just a commoditized approach to throwing expletive at the walls and hoping something
Yes.
sticks. So,
It's the innovation conundrum of our business is it's coming from a good place when a client says, I want you to help me do things no one's ever done before. And then when you come up with an idea, the next thing is, great, show me 5 other clients you've done this for. Uh, that conundrum has been there for as long as I've been in the business.
right.
And you understand it because, again, nobody wants to own those failures. I do think we all have an opportunity now to deliver a better, more refined, more meaningful experience to a consumer who will absolutely tune out a brand that doesn't show a level of understanding or empathy.
Let's talk about let's break it down this way. There's personalization, which is every organization's brass ring in marketing. We are
Yes,
going
and a
to
very loaded term, right? Because to some people, personalization means sticking someone's name at the beginning of an email,
right.
but really, the heart of it is personal.
I guess that's what I
When
wanted
I
to
think
get at.
about personalization, it's how do you make it feel like this is just for me?
Right. And there's a big difference between the way we approach it technologically versus the way we approach it from the other side, which is like, hey, there's a person over here. You want them to feel something
Yes.
because on the other side of that feeling is probably an action if you're smart about it.
More than anything, you want them to feel seen.
Yeah.
I mean, that's such an easy term to throw around, but I was just interviewed on a similar topic yesterday. And it was about the importance of emotional intelligence in marketing. And I was asked for some of my experience. And I said, what we learned, for example, I did a lot of work with a major airline. I won't name them, but I love them. They're far out west, maybe not even on this continent. I'll leave it at that. And what we found was you wanted to really lock in somebody's loyalty and get them to book incremental fares with you. Throwing fare sales at them or bonus miles didn't, because everyone can do that. But hang on, we actually have a history of where this person goes. We can see patterns. That data tells stories. And when we use data tied to the destinations that people visited most frequently, that made them feel seen. That showed an understanding of who they are. And suddenly you're not the same as every other airline throwing a fare sale at them, trying to sell them the cheapest seat. Heck, they might even take a connecting flight because you show them, you get them, and you understand the motivations for their travel and the memories they're creating when they're there. And you know what? We won a bunch of Effie Awards doing that. So it's not just like warm and fuzzy stuff. It makes money. Emotional connection is the greatest financial leverage any marketer has right now. It's just elusive for a lot of brands that don't want to invest in figuring it out.
Well, we keep talking about this as if it is some sort of magical inflection point. In fact, I think it is, with AI to personalize, um, let's just say a conversation, for lack of a better word,
Yeah.
with a customer. It was too expensive a proposition. You couldn't get to the level of the quantity of data, the level of insight that you would need to cobble together a sensible conversation up until very, very recently. And now with AI, that's actually possible. And I feel like I know this because I talk to companies all day long who are in the midst of their own kind of AI transformations. Like, holy smokes, look what we can do now that we couldn't do 18 months ago, relative to finding the right way to engage with a customer. But I'm
Yes.
feeling like, so now light bulbs are going off all over corporate America and hopefully all over the marketing world as well. Like, wait a second, we have a whole new set of tools we can use. In a couple of years, my hope is that weak personalization will be a thing of the past because there's almost no excuse. On the consumer side,
That's right.
right now there's still a pretty heavy lift because you got a lot of technology you've got to integrate and buy and figure out and grow with. But give that 2 or 3 years. I feel like if you're a consumer-oriented brand in this country and you're still putting out hi Ian, email copy goes here,
Right.
then
Or as I literally got recently, it was high and then it was a 7-digit number.
makes you feel good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Um, at some point, um, our expectations as consumers will rise to the point where weak personalization isn't acceptable anymore. I think we're not quite there yet.
Well, I think it varies by category. The more options somebody has available to them and the easier it is for them to get at their options, the higher the bar gets raised. And look, I think something happened to everyone through the pandemic. Gosh, I feel like we talked about the pandemic and its impact on marketing, so ad nauseum, and then it became like nobody mentioned the pandemic anymore. But the reality is we experienced an acceleration of tech adaptation that nobody could have seen coming through the pandemic. We merged what used to be these somewhat coexisting spheres of digital customers and traditional customers. And there are the people who only want to buy retail and the people who only want, and all of a sudden, when everyone realized this is how life works, and I have a choice to either be part of modern life or not, it all merged together. And there are elements of customer experience that clicked ahead 3 to 5 years in the space of about 6 months, fairly early in the pandemic. And it left everyone with a much higher level of expectation. Because once everyone had to start using things like Amazon, things like Zoom, just to live their life, things like Uber, well, then they expect all of life to work that way. And what
Sure.
we're even seeing, which is I think exciting and mind blowing, is it's also blurred the line between the consumer and business spheres. There used to be one level of expectation for consumer experience, but think back 5 years ago, you would never expect a B2B brand to act like Amazon, to know you that well, to be that content driven, to be that anticipatory. But now you're either in or you're out. And if you're in any category, there is an expectation that everything works like Amazon, that everything works like Netflix and has this coded understanding of where I've been, where I'm going, the next thing I want to see, what I'm looking for, or it's just too easy for people to choose a competitor. And
Right.
when they do, they never come back. And one thing we know for sure, and this is an age-old adage, is the vast majority of people who are dissatisfied with a brand, they leave without ever opening their mouths to complain. It's not people's nature to complain, it's people's nature to move on. And it's way too easy for an undersatisfied or dissatisfied customer to just click over to another solution and never come back.
And you'll never know it. You'll never know it. You have
You'll
been
never know
just
why.
right.
You'll just know when they stop buying.
Right. So let's point this forward a little bit, because this is great fun. I love the fact that you and I see the world largely through the same kinds of engagement lenses.
Same here.
But let's
Except
look
that your white hair is atop your head and mine is beneath.
right for the moment, but it's going fast. So because you and I have been around the block a couple of times here, we've seen trends come and go. We've seen the sine wave of, of here's what's working, here's what is going to be passe in 6 months. Let's look ahead for the next, say, 6 months to 2 years, and frame it up this way. Right now, we're just now realizing what AI can do for us in terms of productivity, efficiency, and personalization, the right kind. What do you think that's going to look like in, say, a year or 2 years?
Well, one thing it's looking like more and more every day is that brands can't get away with treating customers like customers. And what I mean is, if a brand only knows you in the context of what you buy from them, that's not going to be enough to satisfy you as a consumer. Because more and more people expect brands to fit into their lives. The notion of customer centricity, remember when that was like all anyone wanted to talk about? When's the last time you heard somebody brag about being customer centric? It's because by the time those systems were built out, the promise itself became irrelevant to people. People want life centricity. People want you to get who they are when they're not buying from you, when they don't need your product. And AI really gives brands, all of us in marketing, a lens into somebody's life far beyond that moment when they need to buy something. So I think that's one of the big evolutions. That evolution of expectation is only going to increase. Some of the conversation we had a few minutes ago about it's going to be too easy for people to find a brand that makes them feel seen and understood. So if you don't want to play that game, you might want to figure out something else to do for a living. That's just reality. The other thing that's happening is we're seeing a crazy acceleration in the way technology and consumerism fuse together. That's only going to continue. And the interesting thing is it's being led by our youngest consumers.
Sure.
Our older generations, like me, I got introduced to new technology when somebody that I looked up to, a business mentor, my dad bringing home a VCR, like that's how you learned what technology was. And somebody, usually older and more experienced than you, showed you how it worked. And that has changed dramatically. Gen Z is now teaching everyone how the world works. Social commerce very quickly went from something only Gen Z did because they're crazy. And now it's like the way everyone buys everything. It's the way seniors find out about new nutritional supplements, So the outsized influence of Gen Z as they grow into being a dominant force in both business and consumer spending will evolve the way people expect to interact and experience brands. At the same time, everyone's expectations are already increasing based on their own life needs. Marketing has to become exponentially more empathetic in order to survive as a practice. And I see it happening. It's very encouraging.
I hope that the next conversation we have, and I'm counting on more of these,
Good.
we can talk about some of the brands that are doing it well, where, creating empathy, feigning empathy is easy. Creating genuine empathy at scale is extraordinarily difficult, or has been.
Yes,
So
it's a high wire act because people can see through the bullshit like never before. See, it took me all this time to use a vulgar term.
we finally
But
got to it, though. That's the
we
good news.
finally did. But yeah, people's bullshit detectors are so much sharper. They can't be snowed anymore. And again, the more consumerism and just like living life merge into one thing, like you look at a new product like Telly, for example, and that is going to be a fascinating human experiment to see how people feel about getting a free TV and free programming in exchange for constant exposure to simultaneous ad messaging running underneath. Um, a lot of people are betting against Telly. I think it's going to revolutionize things.
I mean, that model's been tried before and successful for some period of time until somebody came along that had something better. So I'd buy it.
Yeah,
Plus, I love advertising. So there's that.
same.
Ian, it is a pleasure to speak with you. And I was serious when I said I'm looking forward to the next several conversations we can have. I
Let's bring
think
it.
it's not just nice to commiserate with somebody with a similar point of view, but I think that the way you articulate that point of view, which I think is important, is really solid, straightforward, and worth listening to. So
Oh,
thanks a
that's so
million.
kind of you. Thanks, Mike. I really enjoyed this. Can't wait to keep the conversation going.
Let's do it.